So I want you to join me in welcoming Professor Julio Capó. He's a new professor. This is your second year at UMass? Yeah, this is his second year at UMass, and he's an assistant professor in the Department of History and the Commonwealth College. And he's young, but even though he's young, even though he's this young, he's already won several awards and prizes and grants. So that's very good for us to have him here at UMass. His research and teaching interests include Latino studies and U.S. Latin American relations with a focus on sexuality, gender, ethnicity, and immigration. He's currently revising his manuscript of his history of queer Miami from 1940 to 2000. You're still revising?
I am.
The manuscript offers new interpretation of queer, Latino, Latina, ethnic, and immigration history. It interprets the gay movement in the United States by factoring how sexuality influenced not only constructions of race, ethnicity, and gender, but also international phenomena such as immigration and foreign policy. It pays particular attention to how immigrant communities, namely Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, Colombians, and Venezuelans, affected the same-sex policies in the urban center. And he teaches courses here at UMass on Caribbean and Caribbean-U.S. relations, Latin America, the national period, and introduction to Latina studies and Caribbean histories. So if you're interested, and some of you are doing the certificate, he's a good resource. Today, he's talking to us about Duvalier is using the gay issue as a diversion for the poverty and exploitation, a history of the early years of HIV/AIDS in Haiti and the United States. So it's comparative.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Gloria and for all of you for welcoming me here today. I actually want to begin by kind of building on that just a little bit. This is what I'm presenting today is very, very new research. It kind of happened by accident. That is, as I am finishing revising my manuscript as we speak. All goes according to plan. In a few months I'll finish submitting it. And as I was trying to strengthen this sort of transnational component, looking at a place like Miami for the gay movement, I went back to Haiti to better understand how Duvalier's regime had responded in 1983, as I'll show you in just a minute, the CDC lists Haitians as one of the high-risk carriers for HIV/AIDS. So as I was there, I kind of came across new material that really took me in an entirely new direction, and I believe this will be the sort of focus of my second project. All right, I'd like to begin this presentation then with a pretty graphic description. Not the best way to start something sometimes, right? I hope it will help demonstrate the enduring quality of the historical construct that has long depicted Haitians as primitive, immoral, and even cultish. I also hope it will help contextualize the cultural currency of my talk here today. May 26, 2012, so about a year ago, seemed like an ordinary day in Miami Beach until a man named Rudy Eugene unsuspectingly confronted a 65-year-old homeless man on the Venetian Causeway that's in Miami. Eugene stripped off all of his clothes and attacked the man, chewing off chunks of his face. Police responded to the scene and shot Eugene dead. His victim was just breath away from death. This is his victim here, the homeless man, and that's Rudy Eugene. Of course, this is prior to the attack. The episode made national, even international headlines, and many referred to Eugene as the Miami zombie. In an effort to clear the growing stigma attached to Eugene, a friend told the press, Rudy was not a face-eating zombie monster. It revitalized panic, regardless of how real or exaggerated, over zombieism and cannibalism that enjoyed a resurgence in popularity with the success of Hollywood representations such as the AMC's Walking Dead. Hidden beneath this headline is a long history sprouted within the seeds of colonialism and imperialism. Eager for an explanation, many reports qualified Eugene as Haitian. Initially, sources speculated that Eugene might have been under the influence of a drug stimulant colloquially known as bath salts. A new hypothesis soon emerged. 4 days after the attack, journalists released an interview with Eugene's girlfriend. The article noted that she, quote, unlike Eugene, is not Haitian and has never believed in voodoo until now. The Miami Herald reported Eugene's girlfriend suspected he had been slipped some sort of hallucinogen, or that someone had placed, quote, a voodoo curse on him. To provide a more concrete example, admittedly not in the mainstream press, but in ChristWire.org, a fake news blog, much like The Onion or something like that, the incident was linked to contemporary panic over homosexuality. The post, titled, Miami Bath Salts Lead to a Sodomy-Induced Zombie Apocalypse, noted, one has to wonder, why were the zombie and the victim naked? Sodomy. If anything is going to turn a normal man into a soulless creature that must eat human flesh for sustenance, then it is sodomy. While this blog is not at all representative of the mainstream coverage, the earlier part was, and it calls into question how this rhetoric became accessible and a part of this real-life human tragedy. Indeed, there are many parallels between something like the Miami zombie and other historical moments in U.S.-Haiti relations. In 1934, that's the year that U.S. Marines ended its near two-decade occupation of Haiti, a man named John Houston Craig, a Marine who landed there, published a book called Cannibal Cousins. This would be his second about the U.S. occupation from 1915 to 1934. The book offered a sensational account of Haiti, chock full of mistruths about black magic, cannibalism, much like something like the Miami zombie, and the savage life of the peasantry. By no means was his book unique. It represented the larger trend produced by the U.S. occupation of adventure narratives that misconstrued the Haitian experience. While books like this proved popular and lucrative endeavors, not everyone was receptive to their racist and essentialist observations. For example, the black press, parts of the black press, including the Baltimore Afro-American, published a snide response to Craig's book. It noted that Craig should shift his attention away from the, quote, alleged cannibalistic practices of the voodoo cult in Haiti and pay far more attention to what's happening in the United States. That's where, that is in the United States, they could find a white man named Albert Fish, who, quote, confessed to murdering and dismembering a 10-year-old boy. If Craig wanted to expose the, quote, thrill of eating human flesh and drinking blood, he need not look further than New York City. The newspaper then mockingly juxtaposed the black, cannibalistic, sex-crazed, savage authors like Craig had claimed to have met in Haiti with Fish. In emphasizing Fish's whiteness and Christian faith, the periodical, the Afro-American Press, noted he was, quote, descended of Revolutionary war stock and can recite the 10 Commandments forward to backward. It soon became evident that Fish's cannibalism satiated his sexual appetites as well. In fact, as famed psychiatrist Frederick Wortham, he's the psychiatrist in the 50s really famous for essentially attacking comic books, the man who essentially claims that Batman and Robin are gay, for example, and Wonder Woman is sort of lesbian icon. Fred Wortham argued, sadomasochism directed against children, particularly boys, took the lead in his sexual regressive development. As such, the newspaper, really in defense of Haiti, clarified that it was Fish, not the Haitian, who was a sex pervert. Indeed, homosexuality and pedophilia, which in this era were used as part of the same sort of broader category, were among Fish's own crimes. So I believe both of these cases, although one is from the 1930s and the other one just from last year, serve as examples of the enduring colonial and imperial legacy that has naturalized the image of the uncivilized, barbaric, and hypersexual Haitian. For the sake of brevity, today I won't address the longer trajectory of this history. In other parts of this work, I've explored the origins of this history, beginning with the fantastic Saint-Domingue Revolution from 1791 to 1804, that ultimately led to the abolition of slavery, of course, and the creation of the first Black Republic in Haiti. With this, the sort of drastic changes that Haiti endured during the first U.S. occupation of Haiti, that is from 1915 to 1934. I do hope, however, that these two examples help demonstrate that the AIDS crisis in the 1980s does not stand in isolation. That this is really a longer trajectory here, right? So the rest of my talk here will focus on the discovery of HIV/AIDS in 1981 and its continued discursive ties to Haiti. This transnational history explores the distinct social, cultural, and political factors that prompted government officials in both Washington, D.C. and in Port-au-Prince to scapegoat homosexuals and Haitians as diseased and undesirable populations, in many ways reflecting some of the same essentialist discourses I just described. Few studies, most notably Paul Farmer's classic work, AIDS and Accusation, have investigated how Haiti's legacy of colonialism and racial motivations influenced U.S. health officials' decision to categorize Haitians as inherent carriers of HIV and AIDS. It is impossible to separate this history from the longer histories of slavery, colonialism, and imperialism in Haiti. As Farmer concludes, AIDS in Haiti is a tale of ties to the United States rather than to Africa. It is a story of unemployment rates greater than 70% and the pursuit of trade and tourism in a dirt-poor country than with dark Saturnalia celebrated by blood-maddened, sex-maddened, God-maddened Negroes. And this image here, this comes from Time magazine. I can't understand the disease, but I can certainly see where it is coming from. And of course, the scientist is in sort of test tube, right, is Africa. And here, of course, is a picture of AIDS and Accusation. It's really groundbreaking work that looks into this designation by medical anthropologist Paul Farmer. Even less research has documented how that phenomenon became entangled with the newly politicized gay rights movement. That is, even a book like AIDS and Accusation seems to step outside of the gay rights movement without kind of looking at that as a lens, right? So as a movement in and of itself. With this work, I hope to shed light on a new dimension to what Farmer calls the geography of blame, by demonstrating how the United States' scapegoating of Haitians for HIV/AIDS in many ways mirrored the rhetoric of Jean-Claude Baby Doc Duvalier's government that foreign homosexuals were responsible for spreading the disease on the island. Both governments, that is both the United States and the Haitian government, failed to consider the elasticity and the fluidity of same-sex identities, desires, and behaviors. Rather, several institutions maintained rigid categories of gender and sexuality to help justify the crisis and detract blame as the emergence of the homosexual plague raged on. When the U.S. government categorized Haitians as a high-risk group for the disease in 1983, the Haitian government and members of Haiti's diaspora cried racism and imperialism as critical factors in the pseudoscience that reached such a conclusion. Meanwhile, leaders of the U.S. gay movement cited homophobia in Haiti, an accusation that mirrored the larger medical discourse that dismissed HIV/AIDS cases amongst patients who did not identify as homosexual as a product of Latin American machismo. As these issues got lost in translation, so to speak, mired as they were with essentialist concepts of race, ethnicity, gender, and sexuality, sufferers of HIV/AIDS were rendered helpless, with no cure, assistance, acknowledgement, or even hope in sight. As one 34-year-old man who pleaded for accelerated research to help understand and combat the disease before the United States Congress in 1983 said, "I came here today with the hope my epitaph won't read, 'He died of red tape.'" So from the very beginning of its discovery, public health officials linked HIV/AIDS to Haitians. Let me begin the story with July 3rd, 1981, the date the New York Times first reported on the mysterious disease.
What year do you say, 2001?
1981.
81.
Here's a copy of that periodical. So rare cancer seen in 41 homosexuals. It actually been reported on prior in San Francisco 3 weeks before, but this is the first time it kind of makes large mainstream press. In its earlier days, the mysterious disease was often referred to as GRID, that is the gay-related immune deficiency. Within the year, actually within a few months, gay activists will organize and ultimately have the name changed, the petition lobby, and to make it change to AIDS. Homosexuals, of course, were not alone. In a July 1982 report, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, that is the CDC, revealed that from April 1st, 1980 through June 2nd, 1982, 20 Haitians, all residing in Miami, had shown evidence of this deadly disease. The Haitian natives, who had all resided in Dade County from a great period of time, that is, some were only there a month, others had been there over 7 years, all showed signs of the mysterious disease. Many of their debilities, however, differed from their homosexual homosexual patients. The report indicated that 10 of those patients had already died. With limited knowledge of the disease, the CDC warned physicians who care for Haitian patients should be aware that opportunistic infections may occur in this population. Opportunistic infection, of course, is the sort of terminology for the sort of ultimate disease that leads to one's death with accelerated AIDS, something like KS or pneumonia, PPC pneumonia. By 1983, reports indicated that although Haitians constituted 2%, that is 2%, of Miami's population, the city's Haitian community represented 60% of HIV/AIDS cases in the area. So with little knowledge and understanding of this mysterious disease, CDC officials maintained in August 1982 that those with AIDS were, quote, walking time bombs. While most had associated the disease with a gay lifestyle, the homosexual plague had, quote, started spilling over into the general population. In addition to homosexuals, men and women labeled as intravenous drug users, that is IV drug users, hemophiliacs, and Haitian immigrants had also been linked to the disease, so really from the very start. Medical researchers noted that, quote, some of the 30 confirmed Haitian victims had the disease almost a year and a half ago, before they left Haiti for the United States. That means they brought it into the United States with them. So with over 1,200 cases of the disease reported in the United States, the CDC made new official recommendations on March 4, 1983. So about 30 years ago, just a few months ago. In a report based on current evidence, the federal agency identified groups with, quote, increased risk for developing AIDS. It observed, most cases have been reported among homosexual men with multiple sexual partners, abusers of IV drugs, and Haitians, especially those who entered the country within the past few years. This is already a really pivotal moment for Haitian migration. Just a few years prior, the Bahamas, which had long been since the place that many Haitians had sought work, had revoked most working permits. So there's suddenly a push where Haitians find themselves in really no man's land, right? So this just kind of fuels that sort of nativist furnace, that anti-immigrant furnace that Haitians had experienced quite a bit of already. Aware of the potential risks of reporting a broad blanket categorization, the CDC also offered a caveat. However, each group contains many persons who probably have little risk of acquiring AIDS. The case of the Haitians was particularly problematic, as the CDC's report acknowledged that, quote, very little is known about risk factors for Haitians with AIDS. Despite that, the CDC's recommendation directly linked Haitians as inherent carriers of the disease, opening the door for policies that permitted and even encouraged the differential treatment of Haitians. The 4 high-risk groups, for example, were soon referred to by the medical community, by the press, and by contemporaries as members of the 4-H club, that is, hemophiliacs, homosexuals, heroin users, but really any IV users, and lastly, the only ethnic group to be labeled as such, Haitians. Within days of the CDC's announcement, the American Red Cross acted on recommendations by the Public Health Service, the PHS, which has long been the association that the United States looks to for immigration policy, not the APA, for example, by informing high-risk groups that they should refrain from making blood donations until more is known about AIDS. The PHS identified high-risk blood donors as those already diagnosed with AIDS and those with AIDS-like symptoms, sexually active homosexual or bisexual men with multiple partners, Haitian entrants, IV drug users, and the sexual partners of all of these aforementioned groups. A few days later, the Canadian Red Cross followed suit, even though only 26 cases had been reported in the whole country. One Canadian report observed, people who give blood will not be asked about their sexual preferences or racial origin, but will be asked about their general health. Similarly, an official from the Canadian Red Cross cited the community's responsibility in keeping others safe. Whether a voluntary donor's sexual preference lie one way or another, or if he's Haitian, you have a person with a strong sense of responsibility. So while researchers had no conclusive evidence that blood transmitted the infectious agent that caused the disease, recent cases of hemophiliacs, and that is receivers of blood transfusions in general, sort of heavily suggested this link. And it's at this moment that it becomes clear that it's spread in this way. Some sources maintain that collaboration between the United States and Haiti was vital for this whole conversation. Haiti-U.S. relations were historically strong throughout the second half of the 20th century. As a result of the successive dictatorial regimes of the Duvalier. Francois Papadoc Duvalier from 1957 to 1971, and his successor son, Jean-Claude Baby Doc Duvalier, 71 to 86, maintained strong relationships with the United States throughout their authoritarian regimes that were defined really by paramilitary rule, foreign capital, corruption, and the exploitation of the peasantry. Baby Doc, for example, made a pact with President Ronald Reagan's administration early in 1981 that allowed the U.S. Coast Guard to patrol Haiti's waters and repatriate those who sought to escape the country. This relationship, most often strained and manipulated by both governments, was further complicated, of course, by the rise of HIV and AIDS. In May 1983, the New York Times reported that when third world countries are linked to new epidemics, they are frequently and understandably wary of being blamed for exporting the disease. It also noted how some medical officials from the United States traveled to Haiti to, quote, develop collaborative research projects with local medical practitioners. One U.S. health official observed how the Haitians were concerned that they were being blamed, but they've done a remarkable amount of work on their own. Referring, of course, to the treatment and research Haitian experts had performed already on the island. Similarly, some Haitians expressed changes to their sexual lives, heeding warnings from medical officials. In a letter to the editor in a Haitian newspaper, a young male executive reported, "I take my precautions, but it's hard, I admit. I have been absent for some time. I frequent the brothels. By habit, I drink, I dance, but I never make a purchase," he said with a laugh. One just never knows. More effective collaborations crystallized, however, in the form of protests, as new voices emerged in the United States to help explain and challenge this designation. Members of the Haitian diaspora in the United States were quick to argue against the CDC's high-risk categorization. In Miami, for example, the Haitian American Community Association of Dade Hassad emerged as a vocal opponent to this new stigma. Henry Marcellus, the chairman of the organization, maintained that there is a psychosis of fear created by AIDS that has caused people to regard Haitians as disease spreaders. Similarly, Yves Savin of Miami's Haitian Task Force argued, "We have always been an easy target for anything mysterious," very much, of course, recalling things like the Miami zombie that I mentioned, right, and the cannibalism cases of the 1930s. One physician who worked out of Little Haiti put it more crudely, "Who cares about AIDS? I haven't had one case here yet, but we've got kids who die of malnutrition. The number one disease in this neighborhood is 54% unemployment." A similar defense was expressed on the other side of the Florida Straits. The Haitian periodical Le Nouvelliste ran a story that particularly sought to defend members of the Haitian diaspora. The June 23, 1983, so just 2 months after the sort of high-risk categorization by the CDC, the headline read, "AIDS, the fate of our countrymen abroad." It noted how Haitians needed to, quote, focus on the situation of our compatriots abroad, following the false assertion that they are the origin of the notorious and terrifying AIDS. In fact, it noted that discrimination suffered by our fellow citizens is becoming more virulent and discernible. It noted how our compatriots in the United States are seeing doors shut in their face when they seek employment. thousands of them have been unable to find work since the first case of the disease was reported. These claims were echoed throughout the United States and Canadian presses as well. It's not just in the Haitian press. The discourse in Haiti concerning the mysterious disease soon turned to homosexuality, both in Hispaniola and in the United States. In a letter to Le Nouvelliste, a Haitian simply described as a young female intellectual observed, "I think a new form of discrimination has developed with AIDS. We shall see, for example, what will happen to Haitian homosexuals. It is similar to what is happening to Haitians abroad. We are black and we are very poor. We are all categorized as carriers of HIV/AIDS because of that. I think we see things more humanely here," that is, of course, in juxtaposition to the United States. "If your husband was suffering from AIDS," she posited, "would you question whether he was homosexual? I don't think so." The United States, Canadian, and Haitian sources were quick to dismiss the claim that Haitians represented a distinct high-risk group, instead arguing that infected Haitians actually belong to the homosexual category. The International AIDS Task Force, which included several Haitian American doctors, among other medical professionals, questioned whether the infected Haitians more accurately then belonged to that homosexual category. Dr. Mathilde Cream, one of the co-founders of AMFAR, of course, maintained, "We want to show that there is nothing in the genetic makeup of Haitians that causes them to get the disease." Similarly, medical experts at the University of Miami, for example, announced that several of the Haitians suffering from HIV/AIDS were gay. Dr. Gordon Dickinson maintained that people who stated that they were not gay are in fact homosexual. "I have talked to gay men with this disease, and they say that there is an active gay population within the Haitian community." These findings helped explain the transnational connections among those engaging in same-sex acts in the Caribbean. Others noted potential cultural barriers, including the fact that those who interviewed afflicted Haitians in the United States, including places like Miami, could not speak Haitian Creole. What was stressed more frequently, however, was the fact that homosexuality remained taboo in Haiti, the word that's so often used in both the Haitian press, but also the United States and Canadian press. One Haitian American doctor observed that American doctors ask patients, "Are you homosexual or an IV drug user?" and then wait for a yes or no response. They get no answer. He believed because homosexuality or an IV drug use is a tough subject to accept in Haiti. Similarly, the Canadian Globe and Mail quoted Dr. Jean-Marie Dubois, who headed the research center at Montreal's Armand Frappier Institute. "It's almost impossible to know whether a person is homosexual, as homosexuality is taboo in Haiti." Haiti's Le Matin printed a local doctor's opinion on the matter as well. Until today, homosexuality remained a taboo phenomenon in Haiti because of the macho cult there. By associating homosexuality in Haiti as unnatural, imported, and taboo, the discourse helped cement the idea that Haitians then were distinctly susceptible to the disease, right? That they were outside of sort of homosexual category. So that is, as non-homosexual constructs, Haitians became sort of natural carriers of a mysterious infliction that now contaminated the whole world. All these arguments demonstrate the construction of rigid categories of sexuality as dictated by gender norms such as machismo, a phenomenon the Haitian press frequently addressed with the emergence of the disease. This static definition of sexuality hindered further research on the disease, since all parties accepted homosexuality as the sort of origin of HIV/AIDS. Sources soon identified the bridge that connected homosexuals with HIV/AIDS to heterosexuals, bisexuals. That is, bisexuals as a sort of bridge category. New reports concluded that the identification of bisexual Haitian patients who have had sexual relations with American homosexuals in New York and Miami also provide a link between the two populations. There is a very strong bias against homosexuality in Haiti, it reported, and our data may underestimate this risk factor. So while they all agreed that homosexuals and bisexuals now were responsible for this disease, they articulated this argument in very different ways. The majority of the debate concerning homosexuality in Haiti was voiced in imperialist terms that accused U.S. homosexuals of exploiting otherwise heterosexual men who only engaged in same-sex acts as a means of survival. In some ways, we read this even in something like AIDS and Accusation, that it was it essentially erases, in some ways, not necessarily Paul Farmer, but the sort of evidence that concludes in the sort of earlier period, that it kind of erases queerness from Haiti in and of itself, right? That it was imported, that it was all a sort of phenomenon of exploitation. In July 1983, the Haitian periodical Le Matin ran a major story on homosexuality in Haiti, in arguing that until today, homosexuality is still taboo in Haiti. It suggested that homosexuality, like HIV and AIDS, had been imported from abroad. Those who engage in the same-sex acts in Haiti, it purported, are not homosexuals. Rather, to survive, they are forced to sell themselves to tourists. Later that month, Le Nouvelliste ran a front-page story, AIDS, counteracting the bad propaganda against Haiti. The piece assured Haitians that the important thing right now is to study the best means and methods for an effective campaign that would coordinate all of our energies to safeguard the good name of our country, to protect the thousands of Haitians living abroad, and safeguard the interest of our national economy, which of course relied so heavily on tourism, which of course would drop after 1981, especially after 1983. According to Haitian sources, tourism needed to thrive. It also, however, needed to be curbed. Homosexual tourism became the Haitian government's new target. Indeed, there is a wealth of evidence that queer North Americans indulge in Port-au-Prince's rising sex tourism industry as early as the early 1970s. So driven by this new association of Haiti with the new gay disease, Miami's politicized and mobilized homosexual community closely followed the Haitian government's treatment of its own homosexual population. On August 10, 1983, the Miami Daily News reported that the Haitian government had rounded up 56 suspected homosexuals in Haiti as in an effort to assure tourists that Haiti remained a safe vacation spot. One estimate indicated that tourism to Haiti had declined 30 to 40% in the last 6 months. That is after, of course, the CDC named Haitians as a high-risk group in March 1983. Haitian officials raided a hotel in particular, operated by a German-born but naturalized U.S. citizen called Chez Denise, that had acquired a reputation for catering to foreigners who engaged in homosexual acts with youth in particular. The newspaper quoted Haitian tourism director Michel-Ange Voltaire as saying, "The government is controlling all homosexual brothels, expelling foreigners engaged in homosexuality, and keeping watch on everybody for homosexuality. If you're caught in the act, you're arrested." The report suggested that Baby Doc's government had accepted the common belief that promiscuous homosexuals were responsible for the deadly disease. Haitian officials, however, particularly blamed foreign homosexuals, particularly from the United States, who exploited their native populations. Voltaire reportedly said that after spending 3 to 6 months in jail, the homosexuals would be sent somewhere to be reformed. The following day, a new report found Voltaire denying this story, and said that these homosexuals had in fact been taken to the police department, but that they were all then released. In response to this news, Miami-based gay rights leader Bob Kunst urged a boycott of Haiti. Admittedly, an unsuccessful boycott of Haiti, but one nonetheless. Kunst charged the Haitian government had scapegoated its homosexuals for the emergence of HIV/AIDS in the same manner that the U.S. government had partly scapegoated the whole Haitian population for the disease. He said Duvalier is using the gay issue as a diversion for the poverty and exploitation of Haiti. The debate, however, had several other damaging dimensions. Haitian officials claimed its purge was particularly aimed at teenage homosexual prostitution. Wolfgang Fissler, he was the sort of operator and owner of the Chez Denise Hotel, the one that was raided in Port-au-Prince, maintained that Haitian teenagers did not sell sex on his premises. Guy Meyer, a spokesman for the Haitian government, admitted that Duvalier's government had coordinated a general fight against homosexuality in early August 1983, following protests to that plan. However, the government reneged and instead sought to, quote, reform sanitary practices of homosexuals and preventing the spread of homosexuality for the sort of needs of our tourism industry. While the Haitian government sought to detach itself from the sort of unnatural and foreign practices of homosexuality, gay leaders in the United States simultaneously failed to acknowledge the gay liberation's imperialist culture that reified Haitian poverty, exploitation, violence, and exoticism. So really they're both kind of making these sort of egregious mistakes at the same time that really just impacted the Haitians in a number of really important ways. Fissler fueled the flames by emphasizing the Haitian government's new anti-homosexual campaign. They are a poor country and don't know what else to do about AIDS besides throw out homosexuals or kill them, he told the United States press. Fissler detailed the Haitian government's raid on the hotel. They were looking for guests. They were furious with every American. They had machine guns, but that's normal for them. They beat my staff around, but that's normal for them too. Fissler ultimately moved to Provincetown, Massachusetts, because of, quote, AIDS and the attitude of that country. The case seemed to provide concrete evidence of what U.S. homosexuals had long suspected of Haiti, similar to what they had learned about its Caribbean neighbor, Cuba. Latin American dictators continued to oppress their homosexual brethren abroad, and that the gay liberation movement needed to be exported and made available to them. The discourse of oppression and homophobia, however, was never really separated from Haiti's long legacy of colonialism and imperialism, most often articulated by its endemic poverty. Meanwhile, the spread of the disease in Port-au-Prince, Miami, New York, Montreal, of course, all with massive Haitian populations, and soon, of course, throughout the globe, appeared imminent. In Miami, for example, as the Haitian controversy ensued, a new report revealed that the cases of the disease had increased 27% that summer. This now made Florida the third most affected state in the United States, numbers that were still heavily concentrated among the Haitian Americans and other undocumented foreigners, including los Marielitos, that is the wave of Cuban immigrants that come from April to September of 1980. Cases in the Miami area constituted about 78% of all of Florida's infections. This history, I think, complicates traditional narratives of the effects of neoliberalism in the early 1980s. By focusing on Haiti and the newly politicized gay rights movement, this analysis sheds light on how the destruction of the welfare state requires an intersectional interpretation of how constructions of race, ethnicity, class, sexuality, and gender collided with one another, often producing disastrous results. This history also encourages new understandings of the sort of global AIDS movement. As historian Jennifer Breyer has argued, AIDS workers connected AIDS to struggles around incarceration, immigration, and poverty. The story, of course, did not begin in 1981, nor does it end in 1983. In fact, the early 1980s also witnessed at least two other devastating plagues that afflicted Haitians. And of course, as sort of two examples I opened with, the sort of Miami zombie case of last year and the sort of 1930s also show this, right? Devastating plagues that afflicted Haitians, one that are also directly tied to neoliberal policies of the era. In 1981, 30 male Haitian migrants who were held in U.S. detention camps woke up with enlarged breasts. They filed suit against the U.S. federal government, claiming that camp workers at Dade County's Chrome Detention Center had, quote, misused dowsing products. They did not convince the United States jury, however. Similarly, in 1982, swine flu reached the island of Hispaniola. The United States, worried the disease would soon reach its own lands and hurt its own pockets, ordered the massacre of Haiti's native Creole pigs. In exchange, it offered to donate U.S. pigs, an affair that proved disastrous to Haiti's already dismal economy. This all paved the way, too, of course, for the U.S. policy of quarantining Haitian migrants, many of whom were infected with HIV in the Guantanamo Bay naval base in Cuba in the early 1990s. With these thoughts in mind, I would like to end with a contemporary joke. In his pioneering work, And the Band Played On, which chronicled the early HIV/AIDS crisis in the United States, writer Randy Shilts reprinted a joke told by TV personality Bill Curtis in 1983. What's the hardest part about having AIDS, he asked. The punchline, trying to convince your wife that you are Haitian. Thank you.
A couple of questions. I'll just start with one. The decline in tourism in Haiti in the early 80s. Did this have anything to do? I was living in the Bay Area in the early 80s, across from San Francisco, and I remember there was before it could be determined about the transmission of AIDS, there was also the most incredible widespread fear of passing along with handshakes or mosquitoes, anything in addition to sexual contact. Did that have any impact as well? Were people so afraid that, I mean, if you go to Haiti and you don't engage in, sex, you're not going to, with an infected person, you're not going to acquire HIV. Was there a widespread fear of transmission even in tourist hotels?
Yes, so thank you for the question. Absolutely. So even though it becomes clear after hemophiliacs are identified as sort of carriers for the disease, right? Or not carriers, but as a sort of bridge population, that's what at first kind of identifies the notion that it's done, that it's sort of passed this way, right? As a sort of infectious disease in that sense. Even then, that's in 1982, even then, because Haitians are officially listed officially since 1983 until 1985, policies don't really change. So even the sort of medical discourse, for example, the FDA prohibits Haitians from donating blood all the way into 1990. So that doesn't change. The policy that's still in place today for homosexuals, for example, which if we kind of use that logic, right, that wouldn't kind of stay in place that way either. That is kind of shaking hands and all these other notions. But it's so heavily informed that discussion and that debate that it was almost impossible to remove it from that sort of larger equation. So while it was no longer the sort of medical evidence that suggested that, fears and sort of paranoia fueled that sort of that nativist furnace.
If I follow, did it go on? Was there was there embargo against Haitian agricultural products or anything else related?
So there's a few things that just closed down altogether, like the cruise ships closed down parts of Haiti. For example. They no longer visit Haiti as a part. The pigs, of course, after the sort of swine flu, the United States stops buying certain things from Haiti. In that sense, there's an embargo, but not a sort of implicit embargo that we might think of, like Cuba, for example. But there's certainly lots of new laws that are implemented to kind of protect sort of ultimate kind of carrier.
I have a question regarding the disease, because we live in the Northeast, so I was not very familiar with Haiti as a source of the disease, HIV/AIDS. And they think that this was supposed to be prevalent to the south part of the United States, Miami area, rather than New York, for example.
So it was great question. Thank you. It was very big in New York, for example. In fact, there was more protests in New York than there was in Miami. Part of that was that the diaspora community in New York, the Haitian diaspora community, was larger in New York at the time. Today, it would be it's Miami. But something as how Stella got her group back. Have you seen this film? It's a great. What's a great bath? It's a great bath film, I should say. I think it's 1997, 1996. But in this film, Stella, played by Angela Bassett, who still looks just like that. I don't know how. But she goes to Jamaica. She's a kind of businesswoman trying to get her kicks. And she meets Taye Diggs. And there's in a scene, one of her friends, I think it's Whoopi Goldberg, tells her, be careful, that all these people have AIDS. Protect yourself. And someone goes, well, no, you idiot, those are Haitians, not Jamaicans. So correct them by, and this is as far as 1996 or 96, I can't remember the exact date, but so the discourse lives on, and it's, even though it is pretty specific to places like Montreal, New York, Miami, where I think it's sort of protests are heard most loudest, it's certainly throughout the country. I mean, at this point, if you look at ACT UP's papers, and the Larry Kramer's and the sort of early gay activists, even they're making kind of these sort of jokes about Haitians being high risk, so that they're very much aware.
So, I'm sorry I missed the first part of the talk. I was teaching at Hopeful 25. Dr. Brad here. But so I missed the earlier connection that you had mentioned briefly that I heard, where you talked about these other episodes where Haitians are somehow linked with these weird circumstances, cannibalism, disease, racism, etc. And of course, with the AIDS story, you fleshed that out quite well. But as a 19th century historian, I always wonder whether there's something about the legacy of the Haitian Revolution and the way Haiti has been visualized since that in the Western world. Whether there is a sort of prehistory to this which allows people to sort of target Haitians in particular, because you wonder why all these instances happen. I'm thinking also of Laurent Dubois' new work on Haiti and how he looks at some of those connections right back to the revolution. And so it's just a very sort of general question to say, have you thought about that and whether you deal with it at all, or is it too far back?
No, thank you so much. I couldn't agree more. I think it would be impossible to address this without addressing the Saint-Domingue Revolution. I ultimately envisioned this as a sort of larger, my second project, and I've started writing about the sort of naturalization of the sort of barbaric, sort of hypersexual, even the sort of hatching of the zombie. I mean, that would slightly be the early 20th century, something like 1920, 1930, with the first U.S. occupation. But that this is all part of the same narrative. I mean, it's impossible to read something like, Spencer St. John and Sir Spencer St. John and sort of this British ambassador who looks at Haiti in the 1850s and 1860s. I mean, just as this sort of hypersexual, barbaric, uncivilized place. I mean, kind of just making sense, kind of justifying how is it that Haiti became independent? How did it sort of purge these three powerful Western influences, that is Spain, France, and British, as a sort of justification for it, right? That there has to be some sort of supernatural phenomenon that helps explain it. That there has to be something else going on. That this is sort of beyond logic. And I think it's impossible to look at something like HIV/AIDS without attaching it to the sort of longer trajectory of something like Saint-Domingue. Absolutely. Thank you. So this is very new. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Do we find the same thing, as you talked about sexual tourism, do we find any parallels in Southeast Asia or North Africa? Popular so-called destinations for sexual tourism?
Great question. I don't know the answer to, and it's something that I certainly want to explore. The only sort of comparison outside of sort of Canada, United States, and Haiti that I've done thus far has been really to explore the sort of parallels of Cuba, which is really my own sort of specialty outside of the Caribbean at large. And I do see something happen with the sort of anti-immigrant fervor happen with the Marielitos of 1980, who are then linked to the sort of larger trajectory of, well, they went to visit, Africa and the sort of exporting the communist revolution into places like Algeria and Ethiopia and Angola later in the 1970s. Is this a sort of bridge for bringing the HIV/AIDS into Cuba? And then, of course, by sort of purging the queer community and sort of criminal community of the Mario boat lift, did we essentially let them into the United States? So there's a sort of, it just kind of goes side and side with the sort of larger nativist anti-immigrant movement that happened with the economy in the early 1980s. I would imagine that there is a parallel, but I can't say with any certainty. But my guess is yes.
But I would even suggest that since North Africa, Morocco, Algeria were such popular European destinations, whether there was in fact a fear of Muslim Algerians or Moroccans in France. Yeah. It may have happened. I don't know.
I have no idea, but it's something I certainly need to look at. I agree. Just the same with the Dominican Republic. Thank you so much for coming and sharing.